Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our YTRI hosted webinar today. My name is Jason Johnson, and really excited for the discussion that we get to have today. We are going to discuss, I think, some really important and useful information. We're going to highlight an organization that we have admired for quite a while and feel really privileged that we're able to work with them and hopefully get some good takeaways that will be relevant for everybody. So thanks for showing up. Couple logistical things before we get started. First of all, the game plan is to go for about an hour today. Time usually flies on these once we get going, but that's the plan. We'll go for about an hour. And what we like to do, we're on a webinar link. So we've been doing these for, I started doing these 4 years ago, and these have been really fun to get into. One of the things we found is that the chat has become a really useful place for exchanging ideas and for asking questions, etc. So one thing I'm going to ask is for everybody to make the adjustment in their chat tool, the chat box, so that they're sharing comments with everyone. The way you make that adjustment is right above where you type in a message. It says to, and then there's a little drop-down menu. You can adjust that to everyone. And if you will adjust that to everyone, then we can all share comments with one another. And the chat has been a fun place of energy and excitement. So adjust your chat settings so that you're sharing comments with everyone. If it says two hosts and panelists, then the panelists are the only ones that can see that. After you've made that adjustment, go ahead and type in an emoji that describes or expresses how you're feeling so far this week. Share an emoji in the chat that expresses how you're feeling so far this week. Whenever the emojis come in, I have so many follow-up questions that I want to ask. I want to explore a little bit more, but we just don't have the time or the bandwidth to do it. Awesome. Thank you. It looks like most everybody got the chat adjusted over. So thank you for doing that. As I mentioned, my name is Jason Johnson. I represent the YTRI organization. We are an organization, for those that are unfamiliar with this, that's been around for about 20 years. We specialize in teaching the skills and the sources of resilience. And we've worked with literally thousands and thousands of educators and mental health professionals throughout the country and throughout the world, and have a model that I really love. But in the process, we've been able to become one of the I think experts in the field around the topic of resilience, and it's led to us being able to have this platform where we can get together with colleagues and discuss topics that are going to be really pertinent to educators and mental health professionals. And that's what we have today. Our topic today is around building community-based supports for all students. And to help us out with this discussion, we have represented one of the organizations that we can't speak highly enough of. We've got two representatives from communities and schools locations in two different parts of the country, and really excited to be able to discuss with them around this topic, because I think they bring some really unique insight and a really impressive model for addressing this. And so I couldn't be happier. Let me introduce our panelists, and then we'll get into the discussion. First of all, we have Shubhra Endley, LCSW, with over 25 years of experience in school-based mental health services. Shubhra serves as Director of Mental Health and Wellness at Communities and Schools of Houston, proud alumna of the University of Texas at Austin, master's degrees in social work, dedicated career to supervising emerging social workers and teaching as an adjunct faculty member at the University of Houston's Graduate College of Social Work, in addition to all the great work that you've done within CIS. Shubhra, welcome so much, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jason. It's great to be here with my colleague Renee. And yes, I have the privilege of serving as the Director of Mental Health and Wellness for Communities and Schools of Houston. And yes, my background, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And majority of my career, I've actually spent more time on school campuses doing the direct service work than I have in this current role. And so I really think that experience has helped me understand what our frontline school teachers, counselors, faculty, administrators have to face. And for the past 45 years, Communities and Schools of Houston has been supporting the well-being needs of students in the greater Houston area. This year, our affiliate is celebrating 13 years of our mental health initiative, which has allowed us to expand our impact in this space. And happy Mental Health Awareness Month, because it's May. From our launch 13 years ago of our mental health initiative, we are now the largest provider of school-based mental health services in the Harris County area.
That is awesome. I was going to say that's applause worthy. Thank you so much. Now, in addition to Shubhra, we've also got Renee Anthony Leek, CIS Program Director, as the Director of Program Operations for Post-Secondary Success at Communities and Schools of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. Renee brings a wealth of knowledge in education, career coaching, degrees in communications, and extensive training in youth development. Renee is committed to holistic student development and achievement. Her leadership helps prepare CMS graduates for a variety of academic, professional, and personal pathways. Welcome, Renee. So glad that you could join us as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having us, Jason. And hi, Shubhra. Glad to be here and supporting you all. And as Jason mentioned, Communities and Schools of Charlotte, we will be celebrating 40 years of being in our community. And our model is, of course, we surround students with a community of support while we empower them to stay in school and achieve in life, as we all know. We envision in this space a community where every child and family thrives and is positioned for positive economic mobility. That's kind of what we focus on.
I love it. Thank you so much. Appreciate you sharing a little bit more about your communities there. We're going to explore a little bit more here in just a minute. But I'll introduce myself as well. Jason Johnson. I am the Director of Training and Research for the YTRI organization. Been with YTRI for about 8 years. Prior to that, I worked as a school psychologist in the largest school district in the state of Utah, where I was able to work in elementary, middle, and high school settings, worked with trauma groups, behavior groups, and my area of focus and expertise has always been around the topic of resilience, which was kind of the common ground that brought me over to the world of YTRI. Anyway, this is one of my role. This is probably the thing I get to do that I enjoy the most, though, is hosting these webinars. It's really fun. So what I was wondering if maybe a good starting point would maybe be to update, because we have a good broad collection of people on here in attendance, some of which are going to be very familiar with the CIS model and some maybe not quite as familiar with the CIS model. So I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit about the mission of CIS, kind of broadly speaking, communities and schools, and then maybe talk a little bit about what your local mission there is within your individual networks. What are some of the services offered, who's served by it, et cetera. And I think that'll set us up nicely for where the discussion will go next. Let's just go in the same order on this one. Let's go Shubhra and then Renee.
Sure. So Communities and Schools of Houston, we serve currently 163 school campuses within 6 school districts in the greater Houston area. And what this means is that we have at least one full-time CIS student support specialist that's embedded on each one of these 163 campuses. There are times where sometimes we could have a 2-person site, and the second person could be also a student support specialist or a mental health support specialist. And what we are doing full-time on these campuses is that we are addressing things, everything from like basic needs, delivering direct services like supportive guidance and counseling, and delivering mental health services and connecting students and families with much needed community resources. And those resources can come in the form of also our partnerships that we form with corporations and with other nonprofit organizations and public entities.
Thank you, Renee.
All right, so I'll share. In Charlotte, as someone wrote, Communities in Schools is CIS. Those are our acronyms that we use. And as Shubra mentioned, we too place staff, professional staff or site coordinators inside of schools here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools is the school system that we support, and they serve about 184 schools. And of that 184 schools, we're in about 56 of the schools, and that's kindergarten through 12th grade. So we're in elementary, middle, and high school. And again, we build one-on-one relationships through case management and support with our students that we case manage. The way that we work in Charlotte is somewhat different than other affiliates. In some situations, we have more than one person in the school because we have a differentiated services model. And some of those service models include the case managers who support intensive case managers, youth development coordinators at elementary, middle, and high school levels, educational and career coaches, which I support at mostly high schools, and I have a couple. TRIO team, part of our specialized services, post-secondary success, as well as Safe Journey, teen parenting. We also have specialized services, which focuses more on additional contracts and programs and supportive services that are not in the traditional model, as well as our newcomer services. So we're set up that way. And from those differentiated positions, we enroll students that meet the criteria to best support them in the schools we're in.
That's awesome. Thank you for the description there. It's one of the things I hadn't worked a lot with communities and schools professionally as a school psych in the work that I was doing here locally, because we don't really have that model quite set up here yet. And then when I started in this role with Y-Tri, where I was doing more nationally, and I started to get the opportunity to work with communities and schools more, I was just immediately impressed and really struck at the how effective of a model it is, how impressive of a model it is, and how nicely it works as a support to the schools there in the local area. One of the things that comes up a lot in training when I'm working with communities and schools, individuals, is this discussion about the community in schools role within whole student support. And that to me as a school psych is a real big deal. And I've just kind of constantly been impressed at the CIS approach to that. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about the importance of whole student support and what role communities in schools plays within that model. Let's swap the order this time. Let's go Renee first and then Shubra.
Thank you so much, Jason. Whole student support is critical for us. And that role that we play here in our Charlotte area is we build relationships. Without building relationships with the students, the parents, the schools, the community in general, we really don't have much until you solidify that relationship. The next one is we assess the needs of our children. So that's where the case management intensively can come in, and then we support according to the needs of the student. So assessing the needs and then really providing the individual supports while monitoring and adjusting with an integrated student support services model as needed. So those are the three top caveats that I would say how we support students.
Thank you, Shubhra.
Sure. So Renee did a great job talking about our integrated student support model. And we in CIS of Houston also are a provider of the integrated student support model. And along with like the individualized assessment that we do with each student that enrolls with our program, which is one of the beauties of our program, is that it's a voluntary program. So students and families make a decision to enroll their student in a CIS program on their campus. And from that point, when we do the assessment, it's a holistic assessment. It's looking at, it takes a systems approach to see what are the non-academic barriers and maybe even academic barriers and how our program can step in to kind of fill in some of those gaps. It could look like bringing in a tutoring program or like an individual tutor for a student that's a volunteer from the community. It could look like if we're seeing a lot of grief on the campus, then maybe we bring in a provider for a grief group. We could have a mentoring program that's running through our communities and schools program on that campus. So each one of you hear us say, oh, we're on 163 school campuses. And I forgot to mention, we're also in the college space. We're in our Lone Star College system. And each of our programs can look very different because the student support specialists on that campus, the manager is what we call them and here in Houston, they do a needs assessment. It's called a campus needs assessment. And so that there's also a macro level plan that goes into effect along with the individualized needs of the students that are case managed.
That's awesome. Thank you. And just to clarify, to help kind of paint the picture for people that may be unfamiliar with the model, correct me if I'm wrong, but you all have your communities and schools representation on site at the campuses, correct? You'll typically have 1 to 2 individuals from CIS on campuses that are supported by you there to help with assessment, support, etc. Correct?
Yes. So we have one full-time person minimum on each of these campuses dedicated to working with students and families, addressing those, mostly the non-academic barriers that could exist. Like it could be housing instability, food instability, maybe there's some kind of crisis that happened and it's a mental health crisis, and then we see how we can offer support. So yes, it's full-time person embedded on the campus.
That is correct, Shubhra. I'll chime in as well. So using the model that we spoke about earlier, we use evidence-based integrated supports model. So where we focus on what we call the ABC plus P framework. And that ABC plus P is attendance, behavior, coursework, college and careers, and parent engagement. So ABC plus P is what we focus on as we share. Some of the services that we provide are the needs assessments, developing that individual plan for our students, delivering tiers of support, whether that be whole school, small group, or individual supports for our students, and setting goals where we monitor and adjust those goals for students, and just evaluating the results as we go along and do that in the work that we do.
Awesome. Thank you. So one of the trends I've noticed in working when I've trained CIS representatives on the YTRI model, will typically start by having a discussion where I try to get a better idea of some of the challenges that they're seeing there locally, so that we can, really talk about solutions-based, solutions-focused responses to that. And one of the things that it's always been a discussion point, but it feels like the last few years, it's really been escalated in how frequently it comes up as something that is trying to offer support towards is around student mental health challenges. That continues to be a really recurring trend. And so I'm curious if you could share a little bit. I feel like communities and schools has been really uniquely positioned to be able to offer support and align with services, et cetera, around mental health challenges for students. So I was wondering if you could talk about some of the trends that you've been seeing around that, and then also maybe share a little bit about what your response and level of support is within that, because that seems to be such a consistent, I don't think just nationwide, I think it's a global challenge, probably epidemic right now. Let's go Shubhra and then Renee.
Sure. I mean, I think we all know, we've seen the statistics and we're seeing the trends in depression. And even before the pandemic in 2020, we were seeing younger children having signs like suicidal ideations and other signs of depression and anxiety disorders. But then when the pandemic struck and that huge disruption happened to all of our lives, we already started seeing some of the research, like, you know, we've got like in Houston and Texas, we've got the Meadows Foundation. They had already generated a statement predicting the impact of the pandemic and this worldwide disruption on our well-being, and that we were going to have to start preparing to support our students, support families. And honestly, we had to look at the impact of how it was going to affect us as helping professionals. And so, and then here in Houston, even before the pandemic, we have had very large hurricanes. And so we've had to be part of disaster response in our schools and during a crisis such as that. And so over the last 45 years here in Houston, we've been learning every year on how we can better serve those kinds of mental health needs and what that can look like for us. It could be like, I will say across the board on each of our campuses, we are part of the campus crisis team. We're not going to manage those crises by ourselves, and we're part of a team, and we follow district protocols on when we have someone who's having suicidal or homicidal ideations or any kind of high acute kind of psychosis kinds of needs, which unfortunately we are seeing in younger children. And then when it comes to more of the long-term needs, we have licensed mental health professionals that are part of our staff. And if our staff is not a licensed mental health professional, we are committed to mental health first aid trainings. We make sure we are having ongoing trauma-informed trainings for all of our staff. And we use our partnerships because we don't have to be the experts in everything. We know that we have people here locally that are like for example, our bereavement center. They've come in and offered trainings to our staff as well so that we could be better support for our students and families.
Awesome. Thank you. Renee.
I'll chime in and I'll just kind of add, that was done so well, Shubhra, of what you talked about. In addition to that, homelessness is huge. And I feel like that's playing a part in the mental health state of children and families, just in our general community, on top of anxieties after returning from the pandemic. These anxiety and social awkwardness that I see children, or that we see children have, has been very, very real for us, on top of gun violence, not handling conflict well, and not being able to resolve conflicts have resulted in the trauma of gun violence for us this year at a number of our schools. And it's really, really heightened the need for the mental health support, the social emotional support, and just how important all of this is. Counseling and referrals to our school-based partners and professionals in the schools are also critical, because in a big school of 2,000 and 3,000 students, everyone can't do everything that you may see or pick up on all of these students and what they're dealing with. Sometimes we have the little motto, if you see something, say something. Speak to children that may seem withdrawn, so that there won't be any more emergencies that arise. Utilizing, I think, the curriculums of Y-Tri and at our elementary base, same like harmony curriculums. Using this something as simple as art therapy and journaling and writing in the groups, as well as restorative circles, have also proven to support some of these needs.
And Jason, Renee reminded me of something, and I saw a comment in the chat, you know, like when we're looking at the whole student support, I saw a question about duplication of services. And I think that's a really good question. And the best way to avoid duplication is through real authentic collaboration and relationships with our school counselors, with our school administrators. We don't like to work in a vacuum in communities and schools. We're very integrated, you know, because our staff is there full time. Sometimes people even forget that we're communities and schools, you know, because we are so integrated onto that campus. And so how do we avoid duplication? It's by constant collaboration, doing those assessments, the needs assessments, and seeing what's already on the campus so that we're, you know, putting our energy in a space where there's a gap.
And I'll just also add it's constant communication. If you don't share who you're working with and the intensity that you're working with them, there is more than enough students and there's more than enough needs. So I don't think we will ever have enough professionals to address all the students that are in a school. So duplication of services can be avoided if you communicate and share what you're doing. And you are a true collaborative partner. That can be avoided.
I love it. It's hopefully for those that are new to what Communities in Schools offers, you're starting to see that part of their role really is connecting these services. And it's almost like having on-site experts on all the services that are available there, and not just providing direct support, but also helping connect. And it ends up feeling that I think this really, really important role there within the schools. Some of the comments that you shared have me thinking, well, I think where I want to go next is I want to talk a little bit about the power of relationships, because that's one of the things. It's easy to get caught up like in the philosophy or the psychology behind certain services, and we talk about evidence-based and aligning the right things. But one of the really the core values that's always impressed me by you, that I think has really made it such a natural thing for Y-Tri to admire so much, is your commitment to relationships. And so I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit about, one, the value of relationships, and then two, maybe some strategies on what the Communities in Schools approach to relationships is, because it plays such a key role in a lot of the things we're talking about, whether it's mental health support. Shubhra brought up earlier trauma-informed, and usually the best trauma-informed models are built on pillars that include having a relationship with a caring adult, particularly for adolescents. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit the CIS. What's the secret? What's the approach? What's the value from the Communities in Schools perspective on relationships? Let's go, Renee, and then Shubhra.
Wonderful. So thank you so much. You've heard me say relationships several times earlier today, but one thing I want to share with you is people take for granted. We use a foundational practice of developmental relationships in the Charlotte area. And it's a framework that's created through the Search Institute, where we not only use this framework with our students, but we use it with our teams and team members as well as families also. So in that framework, there are 5 principles that are just very basic. But again, we keep them at the forefront of how we work with people and our children. And those are expressing care. How do we express care? By showing children that they matter, showing me that I matter. Challenging their growth. How do we push people or push children to do better, to keep doing better? Providing support, help them complete tasks and help them achieve their goals, as well as sharing power. Treat them with respect and give them a say in some of the decisions that we make. And the last one is expand their possibilities. Connect them with people and places that broaden their worlds. So don't keep them in a box. So those are.
That is powerful. I was just let me tell you, this will be a good test for me of how good I was paying attention in class. I wish everybody could see. I'm always taking notes on this. So I think I wrote them down, Renee. Tell me if I got it right. Expressing care, challenging growth, providing support. Was it sharing power? And then expanding possibilities.
You get an A, Jason. You
Thank you. I was if I have the ability to multitask, I'll try to document them and throw them in the chat. I love simple models like that because it gives us some good checkpoints to help kind of keep us honest to the approach. Awesome. Thank you so much. Shubhra.
I mean, I think Renee did such a beautiful job on how we emphasize relationships at communities and schools. I don't know if y'all know this, but fun fact, our founder, Bill Milliken, his quote, which is, it's not programs that are transforming young people's lives, it's relationships. It went super viral on a Starbucks cup a couple of years ago. So that's just our foundation is relationships. And it's not just, like we were saying earlier, it's not just the relationships we have with our students, but it's the relationships we have with our colleagues on the campus, with our teachers, with our school administrators, our families, our caregivers. And then if we are part of any larger collaboratives within the greater Houston area, knowing where our gaps are as an organization, meaning like what's outside of our ability to provide to our students and families, and reaching out to community organizations that can help us serve our families better. And so I would say that's kind of the relationship piece on a more macro level.
I love it. One thing that's come up, I was wondering if maybe to put you both on the spot here a little bit, it's come up a couple times what your approach to assessment is, and you've both shared that a little bit in part of your process. But I'm curious if you could maybe paint a little clearer picture of what your approach to assessment is, if you have a specific assessment model that you use and how you integrate that within the schools. Maybe Shubhra and then Renee.
Sure. So here in Houston, our student assessment, part of that is, it's called an assets inventory. It's a tool that we here in Communities and Schools of Houston develop based on Search Institute's 40 developmental assets. So it's a strength-based tool that our campus-based staff can use to identify what are the areas in the student's life where maybe we have to put some more focus and emphasis. Is it in their self-mastery space? There's questions that look at self-mastery. There's questions that look at relationships with peers, with their family, with school staff. And then the other piece is just, using that as a tool to have deeper conversations with our students, those one-on-one conversations, and using that assessment. So it is very systems-based, looking at all parts of the systems that influence a student's life, and then creating interventions that are going to be based on that assessment, and creating a service plan and implementing it. And I think Renee mentioned this earlier, we do track outcomes. It could be in the forms of grades, attendance, behavior changes. We use surveys, teacher surveys, to get a feel for what kind of change could be happening or maybe not happening. And then we do a pre and a post test with the assets inventory.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's like a pop quiz. I know I put you on the spot a little bit, Renee.
So I'll just add, Shubhra answered that so wonderfully. but we utilize the 40 developmental assets in creating our needs assessments in what we call is our documentation tool or portal. It's called SYSDM, or Communities in Schools Data Management System, where we document all of our services. So in that system, there is a needs assessment that we complete on every student that we enroll. And in that, the developmental relationships survey by the Search Institute is used. And as I mentioned earlier, the developmental relationships, 5 basic areas that I mentioned are also a part of the Search Institute in their work around this relationship and all of that. So the needs assessment is done in our SYSDM documentation at enrollment. And then from there, we provide the supports that a student needs. So that's where the individual support comes in for our children.
Love it. What I would like to do for just a minute, if my panelists are okay with it, are you okay if I present a couple questions that have come up in the chat to you? One that just barely came up, and I think both of you should be able to speak directly to this because both of you represent areas with a really high level of diversity. But for ESL students, how do you approach students that may need some language support around the services that you're offering and connecting with? We'll go Renee and then Shubhra.
Great, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that. We have, I think you heard me mention earlier, newcomers team, when I talked about specialized teams of differentiation of services that we have. Our populations of Brown students or Latino students are growing in all of our schools. And we have a newcomers team, which is a team that's based 100% from understanding and speaking for Latino children, their language and their needs and all the things that they need. So the newcomers team supports students that are high numbers or first time to the United States and their parents. They support families around navigating that terrain in coming into our educational system and getting some of the needs that they have supported and connecting them with resources in the community. So we have a full team of that, and we're very proud of that because that skill set is not easy to come by for a full team of support. So it is our newcomer services team that's providing that for us.
I would say we also have like a newcomer specialist role in our organization. And also as we are, and I'm sure all school districts and different organizations face the same thing, Houston is a very diverse city. And we also, immigrant refugee populations from like countries all over the world is our reality. And so we have to work really closely like with some of our local organizations to be able to leverage some of the resources that our families, when they've been placed in some of our schools, may not even know exist. And the language piece, we do offer stipends for our staff that is bilingual to attract more of a diverse staff. And so those are some of our strategies that we're using to help support our students in that space.
Awesome, thank you. So I've documented a couple more questions that came in that I thought were really important. Cheryl asked a little bit earlier how you address the stigma which may impact students participating in CIS, and then also how do you address parents who've experienced negative school experiences themselves and may not have a high level of trust in the system. What's your approach to those? Let's go Shubhra and then Renee.
Well, since we offer such a range of programming on each of our campuses, I know when I was on a campus and I was coordinating a communities and schools program, we had everything from, sure, I'm a licensed clinical social worker and kids are coming in to talk to me, or students are coming in to talk to me about any kind of family conflict or something impacting their mental well-being. But we also have programs such as like preparing them for the workforce, like resume workshops and internships at our local hospitals for our juniors and seniors in high school. So it's part of the stigma, like when you're on a school campus, is when one student sees that another student is talking to Miss Shubra or Miss Renee, then it feels less stigmatizing for a student to talk to a trusted adult on the campus. And I think there's that effect that takes place that kind of helps reduce the stigma. And then, of course, you know, when we've got things like Mental Health Awareness Month and different like Red Ribbon weeks and those kinds of things, we do think those are powerful, and our staff participates and does different kinds of events to increase awareness and student well-being.
One of the things that you made me think of, Shubra, while you were describing it, and maybe to put it in like more educator terms, I think a lot of times when people hear about what communities and schools offers, the translation into education terms is like, well, if it's mental health support, then that's like a typical tier 3 intervention for those that are viewing like intervention within the pyramid. And that may be accurate if you're looking at how students are selected or opt into it, in that it's not offered to every student simultaneously. But a lot of what is being offered would coincide with things that might be more of like a tier 1 offering when you're talking about like resume building, et cetera. And I think it's one of the things that makes CIS a little bit unique, is that it's able to get some of those in a little bit more specialized and concentrated area, and really to help those students that may be underserved otherwise. Am I representing accurately?
That's a great way to put it, Jason. Thank you.
Renee.
Yeah, I'll just say, what's important is we've spent a lot of years trying to decrease stigmas of enrollment and involvement, because really, when you think about it, children are just children and people are just people. You really can't help where a child's family's income and situation came from. So what we've been big on a lot of years, a lot of recent years, is diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. Because the more you talk about that and how we support children, so when parents don't fully understand the breadth and wealth of work that we do, we have very rarely had parents say, oh, I'm not going to sign the consent forms for enrollment, or I don't want my child to be a part of it. It's all about how you promote your program and programming. And one of the things that is important with that is training your staff to be knowledgeable, to speak about why you want them enrolled. What is it that they're going to gain? First of all, who does not want a child to aspire higher? Really? Post-secondary success, tier 1s, financial literacy. When I say tier 1s, you're doing whole school support and models. So when people see your children and you doing very positive service learning initiatives around the school, who would not want to be a part? So it's really not a lot of stigma concerns. And we've done a lot of good work over the years to try to take that stigma away from being enrolled in our program. Leadership development, social capital, everybody, that's not an economic support. That's something that everyone needs. And so when you put children and people on an equal ground or footing, the stigma erases itself.
Thank you so much. I'm getting goosebumps hearing about it. This is incredible. So one of the other questions that came in, and I think it sets me up for a little bit broader question that I want to ask. Corden responded, and by the way, hello, Corden. Thanks for being on. Corden's a longtime friend of the organization, doing great work there on the East Coast. He said, would love to hear how youth mentors can work with schools. I'm not getting a lot of support from schools. Parents are working with me directly. And I think it represents maybe the broader question that I wanted to highlight, which is just generally speaking, first of all, what tips would you have? Because, we all have our own experience and our own perspective that we connect to the schools within. And I think your perspective is really helpful to inform educators that are there in a more traditional educator capacity. So what tips in your CIS experience would you have to offer some educators that could maybe benefit from the CIS model? And then also, what tips would you have for community members that are just trying to take better advantage of CIS services or resources that may be offered, or if they don't currently have communities and schools support in their area, what might be the process towards that? So I know a lot of big questions packed into that. If you need me to repeat any of them, let me know. But broadly speaking, what are some tips we can take away from you? And then also, how can we take better advantage or start moving towards a model that would include communities in school at a greater level? Let's go Shubhra and then Renee.
Sure. I mean, just kind of seeing the questions that are coming in the chat. I think the biggest tip is knowing that you can't do it alone. You can't meet the multifaceted needs of our students, no matter if you're in Houston, Texas, or somewhere in California, or all the places that are represented today. And knowing that we can't, or you can't do it alone, and that's multifaceted needs. It's not just one solution sometimes, or one kind of intervention, or one prevention program. That partnerships are critical, and those can come in the forms of a mentoring program. Here in Houston, some of our schools have great partnerships with local businesses, corporations, where their staff come and mentor our students during lunch and like have planned activities with their mentors. And so it's definitely like it's all everything that it takes to remind students that they're not alone, and that there are caring adults out there for them, be it in the form of a licensed mental health professional, a mentor, a tutor, a newcomer specialist. I think that's the key takeaway there.
Thank you, Renee.
And I'll just add, I mean, one thing Shubhra was alluding to is it really, really does take a village. You cannot support children and things that you want to provide for them alone. It does take a village to do that. Working with the parents, parent engagement, working with the schools, school engagement, working with the community that you build. In addition to that, just cultivating all of these relationships as stated. So you have to spend a little bit of time to build them and then cultivate them. One of the other things I had is focus on being intentional for impact. When you have the intentionality and you're not all over the place, then you can have greater impact. Collaborate and communicate. And then the last one I'll say is always keep students at the center of everything you do. If you do not do that, then you're losing focus, because we're all here about working more to support our children and our students who eventually become grown adults in our communities.
I love it. Thank you. Any thoughts on or tips for individuals that may not have communities and schools within their area? What what can they do about it? I'll throw it. Let's go Renee and then Shubhra.
I'll say go to your local government, go to your local school board, speak to our national office about how we can expand services in your community. What's available? If you don't have a full program, where can you start with a portion of a program? So you've got to start the conversations. You've got to put the effort forward so that everyone knows that you're very, very interested in having some supportive services to help your schools and your communities thrive. And that's where I would start.
I don't think I could say it better than Renee just said it, but I will say, pace yourself, whatever your role is within a school campus, pace yourself. And also, it's like ongoing, right? Like we're going to get new classes of students each year. And And preserving yourself and your staff is very important. We can't be there for others if we're not taking care of ourselves. And so also putting the emphasis inwards, I think, is important.
Thank you. One of the things I've loved about working with communities and schools is they're able to be pretty creative. Like every district has, you know, its own parameters, its own like community things it has to check and it has to do. And communities and schools has been able to be pretty creative around those services. Honestly, how we started working with them in part was because we had districts that may not be utilizing YTRI as a resource to teach the skills of resilience, but communities and schools in certain cases were able to offer that as just one other resource for students that wanted to or needed to be taught the skills of resilience. And so I think there's just some awesome takeaways from that. Cheryl, your question, I think, aligns real nicely with where I wanted to go next. I wanted to give you the opportunity, our panelists, to address any misconceptions that people may have about communities and schools, or some things that people just may not know about communities and schools. For example, like, how's it funded? Does it cost students anything, et so I would love to hear your responses to that. And yeah, we'll go from there. Let's go Shubhra and then Renee.
Yeah, so the main thing to remember, I think, is that Communities and Schools is a program. So in our affiliate, we've got a development team, a partnerships team, you've got a mental health director like me. And so when you do decide to contract with a local Communities and Schools program, you're getting a full program. You're not just getting one person on a campus. And I think that's a good takeaway. And our affiliate, we have grants, we have public funding, we have through Texas Education Agency, we have private fundraising, and those are kind of the ways that we pay for programming, and we do a matching with the school district. They purchase us and contract with us, but then we also match the amount that the school district is putting in.
For us, I'll just say what misconceptions may be is that we don't charge for any of our services. And that's very important because people, and we're not a program that's a service or a punitive program that you send children that may be having very serious behavioral or, concerns in the law, in our legal system. We're not a program to handle that type of situation. Sometimes people think that we're not a dumping ground program, but there are not fees for our services or enrollment to get the support we have. And our program is totally voluntary. No one has to be made to be a part of being a part of the program. And we're not an alternative type of program as well.
Thank you. Any response? Coldry asked an interesting question, said, have CIS in our area, but not in our school. How do we get communities and schools in our school if we have it locally, but not specifically directly here?
So each communities, and so like in Texas, we have about 25 affiliates that have their own CEO, executive director. Best thing to do, I think we put the link for CIS National. And if you get onto that link, then CIS National can kind of connect you with your local affiliate, and that kind of gets the ball rolling.
Okay, one other question, and this one was interesting to me. I brought this up when we were having a discussion previous to this webinar, but this was me representing the school psychs and probably also the social workers and the counselors that start to worry a little bit hearing about this model. Put the support staff's mind at ease around how CIS is not there to replace existing teams of psychs, counselors, and social workers. Let's go Shubhra and then Renee.
Yeah, we get that question pretty often. We are a program that's we're collaborative, and we actually would not want to be on a campus where there are no school counselors or psychologists in the district that we can access, because we integrate our program into the school district. We're not there to supplement what should be in the school district. And so we're here to collaborate. So
I'll just say it's not a competition. Everyone, as long as you communicate and they understand and know what you're doing, they know that you're there to support them, and you're not competing to help children. So again, it's a respected situation, and it's all about, again, building the relationship, staying, keeping everybody updated and communicating with each other, as well as just sharing.
It's one of the things, thank you for responding to that. It's one of the things that's impressed me the most as I've had the opportunity to work with you, is how honest and authentic every CIS site is around that word communities. And when it says communities, it really is trying to be an integrated part within the community, not just the community of students, but the community of adults serving those students as well. And it really is a true collaborative approach that's just so impressive to me. We're about out of time. So I think let's wrap up with this question. You both have pretty impressive, pretty unique experience. I've been asking this question the last few webinars, and I've gotten interesting answers from the panelists. So I'll present it to both of you as well. What's something that you know now, that you understand now at this phase in your career, that you wish you would have known at an earlier phase, that perhaps would have helped you along the way? Let's go Renee and then Shubhra.
I'm glad you asked that question, Jason. I'll just say, for me, outcomes and successes with children definitely take time. We need to celebrate the small gains and successes. Adjusting and modifications are good practice. Also, self-care and balance are critical to help you prevent burnout or work fatigue. And the last one that I would leave you with is boundaries are great to establish and share, and we have to use those.
Thank you. And by the way, Shubhra, while you're speaking, because we're coming up on closing, I'm going to put up some slides with contact information in case anybody wants to get a hold of any of our panelists. But go ahead, Shubhra.
I mean, Renee said everything I would have wanted to know many years ago, which is about setting boundaries. My only thing is, don't miss lunch. Always eat lunch. I know how wild it is on those school campuses, and I hope that you don't ever miss lunch.
These are both perfect. That's so interesting that you say that, Shubhra. I need you to go back in time and tell the first year school psychologist Jason that same simple advice to not miss lunch, because we try to be super people sometimes,
Yeah.
and
it catches up. It catches up.
It absolutely does. I think one of the things that, thinking about this question, just the discussion in general today, is the thing I wish I would have understood better at an earlier age was just the real power and what true collaboration looks like. I think we talk about it, like we learn about it in grad school, and we think about it and how useful it is, but I don't know that we always have like a clear vision of what it actually is. Like, it goes beyond just sitting in a room with other people and talking about an issue. There, the process of collaboration, it extends beyond that, and it's a journey for all of us. But I certainly wish I would have understood it and seen the value of it better at an early age. And so I guess that's what I would tell the earlier version of myself as well. So, hey, this has been really, really fun. loved the questions you all had. Thank you, attendees, for bringing great questions and thoughtful responses. Let's give a huge round of applause to our attendees, Shubhra and Renee. Thank you so much for showing up, for bringing great content. Thank you so much for representing your local CIS networks there. We are really fortunate enough to be friends with a lot of people within communities and schools, and we're really grateful for that. And I know that the people that are high up there at communities and schools are very proud of the work that you're doing there locally as well. I was sharing with Shubhra, not to name drop, but I got a very nice email from an individual that may have founded your organization earlier this week. Just excited to know that you would be on and representing the great work that you're doing there locally. So thank you so much. Super fun to have you on. Really looking forward. My goal is I want to get, hopefully maybe the latter part of this year, get another round of discussion with CIS. And if today's any indication of it, I think there's lots of questions, lots of interest in learning more about it. So Renee, Shubhra, give yourselves a round of applause as well. You really represented in a fantastic way.
My pleasure to be on this panel with you, Jason and Renee. Thank you so much for pulling us together today.
I really appreciate it as well. It was fun, Jason. Shubhra, I enjoyed you.
Yes, it was so cool.
And I loved all the people and the questions that were on that really made it so impactful for me personally.
That was awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for showing up.